Good day to you, fellow travelers. This is Grotnib, welcoming you once again back to the logbook of a simple Lindworm traveler. This week I wanted to take a break from all the very arduous analysis pieces that I have been doing of late, and I wanted to do something a little bit more light hearted and fun. So today I'm going to be discussing my early favorite units so far in the Warcrow Northern Tribes faction. So what is this video going to be all about? Simply put, I'm going to use this platform and this chance to discuss the Northern Tribes units that I have enjoyed playing the most, that I like the best in my personal subjective opinion as of right now at the end of February of 2025. I'm going to be categorizing the units of the Northern Tribes into four different sections. The High Command units made up of several models, non-named characters and named characters, and then I'm going to be awarding the podium positions to my three top favorites of each category. As this video is supposed to be more of a fun one than a serious exercise on trying to analyze stuff, I have my analysis videos for that. This is going to be just based on what I like the most. So don't get offended if you don't agree with what I have picked, since this is purely for the enjoyment purposes. If you feel like it, before we get to the actual lists of models, you can write down your own favorites in the following categories, and if you are a long-time watcher of this channel, you can even take a gander at trying to guess what are the picks that I'm going to be making going forward. There might be some tips in the video analysis pieces that I have done so far. But without further delay, let's discuss my favorite Northern Tribes units so far. And let's start by the leader of the company. Let's talk High Commands. My third favorite High Command as of right now with the Northern Tribes is Alvard Ice Bear. Unfortunately, for some reason, Corvuspelli still hasn't released a PDF of his card, so I'm using a cropped image of the card that I have here at home, so excuse the poor quality of the picture presented before you. Don't let the fact that I have placed Alvard at the third position fool you. I think he is really cool and awesome a piece, and I really enjoy him. The problem with the high command characters is that you can only ever bring one, and to be honest, they are so expensive that it would be hard to field two in any lists, even if one could. But there's a lot going for Alvard. He's a solo bruiser who can take on entire units by himself. He can heal himself, and he can remove his stress mid activation or mid round, which is a really powerful mechanic that allows him to chain activate and thus wreck enemy forces in a way that's impossible to most units out there. He's also one of our two choices if you are wanting to include high command in your list. So if you are looking for a situation where you can mix and match your Varangs and Orcs, but you aren't looking for the more strategic approach of Alborg, then Alvard is the guy, or should I say the bear, for you. The reason that I have placed him at the third place in this list is twofold. Firstly, I feel that fighting in a straightforward fashion is something that Northern Tribes are able to replicate with their other units and unit combinations quite well also. So I don't think that this is unique an ability that Alvar provides our forces, even though the way he does it and the amount of performance that can be gained from a really small footprint on the battlefield is quite unique. I'll give him that. And the second reason why he's at the third place is his extremely high cost. At 60 points, he is the most expensive model that we have access to so far, and I really find his price point to be somewhat restricting when it comes to building my company, and thus he's not my favorite pick or even my second favorite pick so far. My second favorite high command choice so far has been Aalborg. Aalborg and Alvard share many similarities in my mind, not least with their names, which I sometimes unfortunately get mixed up. Sorry about that. He's a excellent fighter, close to being on par with Alvard himself, even though Aalborg does lack the chain activation capability and he's not quite as sturdy as Alvard is. But what you get for Aalborg instead is a more strategically thinking, more operationally significant commander, in that Aalborg provides your force with 3 command tokens, being the only Northern Tribes commander capable of doing so at the moment, which helps your force potentially outperform your opposition when it comes to rolling for the initiative role, especially in a mirror match or against the Scions of Yaldabao that have been recently released. Against the hegemony, yeah, tough luck. Those forces include so many command tokens that even Aalborg can help you there. And of course, what's the most important part about Aalborg? It's his Wark and the Crow ability, which means that as long as you are having a healthy mix of Varank and Orc units in your company, you get to effectively gain an additional activation per round. That's also free of stress and/or an activation token, since the Wark and the Crow is worded in such a fashion. Unfortunately, though, the Wark and the Crow being such a key ability, such a powerful ability, does actually mean that Aalborg needs to more or less earmark his own 3 command tokens for the use of this ability. Which actually means that when it comes to the high commands, he's actually on the worst side when it comes to providing command tokens for the rest of the force to utilize. Maybe I'd argue that Alvard is suffering a bit from the same problem, since he is very activation intensive and he wants to trigger that healing and wants to trigger that stress removal, so he also needs those command tokens for his own use. Aalborg is also 50 points, so he is quite expensive, not quite as expensive as Alvard, but close to his price point. And with the 3 high commands available to us, having seen my number 3 and my number 2 picks, it should be quite evident that my favorite high command so far has been the Orc Wrathmane. There are several things that I really enjoy about the Wrathmane character. First is the fact that I'm self-aware enough to know that in wargames I tend to gravitate towards the non-named characters over the named ones. Firstly, because I can't help but enjoy the idea of getting to write the story of a character whose fate is not already canon in some way, one way or another. But also, since these non-named characters tend to be cheaper to include in your lists, which grants more leeway in creating a larger and more versatile force of units around them, and that's something that I enjoy with my personal playstyle a lot. Also, the Wrathmane, while being not as scary a fighter as the two other high commands we have access to, is quite a powerful enough solo combatant on his own, even though that's not a way I usually like to field him. At 30 points, it's quite easy to include Wrathmane and a unit of accompanying orc hunters for the same price point as would be the cost of Alborg, and at 10 points less than Alvard Icebear. And what the Wrathmane does for the hunters I really like. He gives them the ability to effectively count their hollow successes as automatic wounds, which is effectively a pseudo elite ability on them, and he also grants them a rare for the Northern Tribes ability to displace enemy units via a switch that can be situationally extremely powerful an ability. And while the Wrathmane only provides 2 command tokens for your force, his own command ability, the Wrath Roar, while decent enough in and of itself, isn't the type of ability that you need to be earmarking those command tokens for usually, which ends up meaning that there are more command tokens to spend for things like the Prime Warriors, Experience and Rage, Iriaviks touched by the winter and so forth, and I really enjoy this flexibility of employment when it comes to using my command tokens instead of having to reserve a bunch of them simply for the use of my high command. In order to get the most out of them. So this is a playstyle thing, this is a feeling thing also, so Wrathmane has been my go-to so far. This leads us to the next category, which is units comprised of several models, and my third favorite unit to play so far has been the Tundra Marauders. The Tundra Marauders hold a very special place in my heart, since they were the first unit that really transformed the way I played and viewed the Northern Tribes. Up until the release of Tundra Marauders, I was feeling that the Northern Tribes were looking like a pretty box standard fantasy orc faction in a way that they were a very blunt instrument that sought to use brute force, coming usually straight at the enemy in order to solve their problems, and they were not very successful at that. But with the release of several units afterwards, I really love how the feel of the Northern Tribes has changed from a horde of barbarians bearing down on you from one direction into a hunting band that's encircling their prey and taking them down with attacks of opportunity and excellent work between the different hunters. And also the Tundra Marauders were the first unit that really showcased to me personally how important maneuver is in the game of Warcrow. The standard units that come to both forces involved in the Winds from the North and beyond the Winds from the North boxes are pretty straightforward in the way they move and behave. Yes, there are a couple of scout units available, but for the pioneers and for the skin changers, scouting is more of a one-trick pony that can help get them into position, but from there on out those units work in a really traditional way. But thanks to the snow leopard tattoo, the Tundra Marauders can maintain their extremely high mobility throughout the battle, and even though when I first saw their card I wasn't terribly impressed by their combat capabilities, being able to leverage this maneuverability to strike at weak points, capture objectives and complicate enemies' plans has been extremely satisfying, and I have really loved playing this unit. Unfortunately, I do have a sneaking suspicion that the Tantrum Marauders are going to get squeezed out of many lists going forward. Firstly, because the excellent Ice Archers have now been released, and they are looking like a unit that I'm going to be fielding quite a lot. And also we have now access to several ambush units which can also achieve more or less of the same things that I have been using the Tantrum Marauders for, so they are potentially on the endangered species list going forward. My second favorite unit pick so far has been the Orc Battle Scarred. This unit provides us with our first truly elite infantry option. At a hefty investment of 40 points, we do get a unit that's quite dangerous when it comes to dealing out damage, but that in and of itself isn't very unusual when it comes to the Northern Tribes units, not especially when it comes to the Orc units that we have already access to. But how sturdy a unit the Battle Scarred are, that's a whole new thing for our faction. The Northern Tribes units tend to be high damage dealing and or high mobility units, but their ability to take a hit has so far been very lacking, and also most of our units are of low morale and or more low willpower qualities, which somewhat restricts how hard we can drive them, how we can use them on the battlefield. But the Battle Scarred are a high morale and high willpower unit, so if and when you are able to attach someone like, for example, the Wise Mane to them, then we have access to a unit that is terribly resilient to different types of damage, thanks to their ability to both produce a lot of blocks, but also their ability to ignore some automatic wound-based damage. That's pretty awesome. And also being able to get them up to morale 3 and up to 3 willpower dice is also extremely good. So I'm looking forward to painting mine up and fielding them a lot going forward. And to probably nobody's surprise, my favorite unit so far has been easily the basic Orc Hunters. As already talked about in the video about this unit, I really love what Corvuspelli has done with this basic Northern Tribes infantry unit. The Orc Hunters are dangerous. They take to buffs very well. There are a lot of characters that can give them excellent performance for the points costs that you have to pay to include them in your company, and they are an excellent way to bulk out the numbers and the battlefield presence of your warband. But at the same time, they are highly unreliable in many ways. And they are not supposed to be able to stand up to the toughest of enemy units, at least not when they are unsupported in such an endeavor. So all in all, a really excellent, really lovely basic unit that characterizes very well what orcs of the world of Lindworm are all about. I'm also happy to see that even though we have gained access to quite a many Northern Tribes units so far, the Orc Hunters still maintain their position in many of our lists going forward. I have a feeling that the Hegemony's basic infantry in the Bucklermen has not been quite so lucky, and I'm starting to see them getting squeezed out of many lists due to the fact that the Hegemony has now access to units that eat the Bucklermen's lunch, more or less in the aggressors, the loaded bulwarks, and even to a lesser extent the new gunner models that's name I'm not even I'm not even going to try and pronunciate here. Okay, let's get to the next two categories, which are the non-named characters and the named characters. I was debating to myself whether I should have these categories as is, or whether I should have a category of the characters that I like to attach to units and the characters that I like to run solo. But in the end, I chose to take this approach, and let's see how that holds up. When it comes to the non-named characters, my third favorite is the Orc Contender. When the Orc officer cards were dropped, I immediately jumped at the Contender, partly because of my non-named character bias, but also because I felt that she is really giving the Northern Tribes forces something that they were lacking at that time, and that is a way of manipulating their conquest values to gain the upper hand in the scenario play, at least in a momentary fashion. And this was something that I felt was quite transformative when it comes to the dynamic of battlefield movement and activation between the so far released Hegemony and Northern Tribes forces. The Contender's effect hasn't been as great in my games as I thought originally, but I think that going forward she is going to be an important part of how we can problematize control of objectives against the Scions of Yaldabaoth and the Siennan elves soon to be released. Also, not just when it comes to how we are approaching defeating the hegemony of Embersig. I also like the Contender very much in the fact that she is a character who is equally at home leading a unit and working solo. No matter how you field her, she never feels like a unit that you are wasting or not getting the best value out of. And at 25 points, she is extremely well priced, I feel. So I'm looking forward to running my Contender a lot going forward. My second favorite non-named character pick is going to be the Dark Master. If the Tundra Marauders were transformative a unit when it comes to the way that I play the Northern Tribes and view the faction, well, the Dark Master has been that from the character side, but on some type of extremely good orichalcum steroids. The ability to apply a pinpoint removal tool against many enemy enabler type units is extremely powerful, and also the ability to tie down certain units in a protracted melee is extremely powerful. And the fact that not only is the Dark Master a consummate assassin, he's also a surprisingly difficult to counter and sturdy a model while doing that. Traditionally, assassin type characters are the kind that they go in guns blazing and then they immediately get carried out their feet first after they have landed their first strike, but not this guy. The Dark Master is surprisingly sturdy and difficult to counter a model, and I have had several games where he's actually engaged the enemy quite early on and lived to tell the tale, so I have really enjoyed playing him from this standpoint also. The other thing beyond this excellent tactical capacity that the Dark Master brings to our forces is a strategic level insurance against ambushers and scout units. And in its current iteration, I am not far from calling the sharp perception ability busted. It's so incredibly powerful, and as we are going to be seeing more and more ambusher and scout units come to the fore, being able to trivialize the first activation threat that they possess against our forces is really quite something. Now that the Scions of Yaldabaoth cards have been released, I have been running into Kipleak and the accompanying needle a lot of late, but when the beast shows up, my units simply shuffle in a way that the Kipleak is unable to land a decisive alpha strike, and from there on out the beast isn't all that scary anymore. So that's extremely powerful an ability for a 30-point model. That's basically an auto include in my forces and would probably be even from simply the way that he fights, but also getting the sharp perception out there is amazing. Just remember to keep away from attaching him to a unit of orc hunters. I really don't feel that's going to be worth it. And then to my absolute favorite non-named character, and that is the Varang Hersir. I personally feel that I am more drawn to the orc units and characters in most situations, so imagine my surprise when I have found the Hersir to be my absolute favorite so far. From the moment that the card for the Hersir was announced and subsequently eventually leaked or released, it wasn't a leak per se, I have really enjoyed what he brings our forces. A affordable way to apply a really powerful force multiplier officer type character to our Varang units is really what the Doctor has ordered. As of the shooting of this video, the next batch of Varang characters hasn't been released yet, and hence with most of our characters and support options and abilities being geared towards the orc side of the northern tribes, this has led to the Varang units being left in their shadow in many respects. But I have found that slapping the Hersir to pretty much any of the Varang units we have had access to so far has had excellent results. Be it a line-breaking unit of skin changers, a backcapping and skirmishing unit of Tundra Marauders, or even as of late a unit of ice archers that can throw out additional damage and or slow thanks to the Berserker Rage when firing their arrows, and then when the close combat ensues they are able to defend themselves and even outfight many of the enemies. That has been really nice to see. The Hersir is even nice on his own, while I would never get him, or usually wouldn't get him as a single piece to round out the force, since we have so many excellent 25-point models for that role. If and when the unit gets wiped out around them, they can still achieve great things thanks to the Tattoo of Sturkrige and their otherwise higher than should be expected damage output for a 25-point character. I also really love not only the Berserker Rage that he grants his accompanying unit, but also the not one step back command skill, which effectively means that the unit that he is attached to can be trusted to never fail an important willpower test in their lives. This has come to even more of a sharp focus now that the Scions of Yaldabaoth have been released, and then they have access to, for example, I think it's Namayon unit that can infiltrate the enemy lines and start killing the units from inside. And the way to stop them from doing that is passing a extremely difficult willpower test. But when you attach a Hersir to your unit of, let's say, ice archers, the Namayon really can't touch them, since the first time the unit would be called upon to perform the willpower test, the Hersir could simply stomp their feet and spend a command token to automatically pass the test, alt the assassin, and then proceed to kill them. So that's really quite something. So the Hersir has been a staple in my forces so far, and I am looking forward to playing them a lot going forward, not least of which because I really enjoy the conversion work that I was able to perform on the model. I don't get that stuff right all of the time, but when I do, I'm really happy about it. And this all leads us neatly to the last category, and that is the named characters. My third favorite named character to field so far has been Lotta. As already discussed in her analysis piece, Lotta provides tremendous value to our units, especially units like the Orc Hunters, or in the case of War Alliance, the Varang Skin Changers. The additional threat range and damage via Move Your Asses is extremely appreciated, as is the traditional perks of a good Orc officer with the additional conquest, automatic symbols, morale, willpower, and so forth. Lotta is usually the first non-high command character that I add to my force, at least if there is any unit of value that I can attach her to. But sometimes I eventually end up switching her out, for example the Wise Main, if I need to shave off some points. The reason that Lotta isn't a must include in every list is that she does require a certain set of circumstances in order for her to work in the best possible way. First, there needs to be no, for example, rugged terrain generating enemies in her section of the battlefield, so that she can make best use of the additional charge distance provided by Move Your Asses. Also, I have come to find that the best places for her are either units of Orc Hunters or the set units of Varang Skin Changers, and if there are no units of those categories that still require a character to lead them, then including her is going to be quite questionable, since her solo performance isn't all that amazing, and I really don't love her in the battle scarred, even though that's something that I need to try out a little bit more going forward. Somewhat surprisingly, my second favorite named character as of late has been Irjavik. When I first saw Irjavik's card, I wasn't terribly impressed. I thought that her solo card lacked enough performance to be worthwhile, and the version with call attached was too expensive to be useful as is. But I have really come around to loving her, especially in her solo form. At 30 points and at conquest value 1 and ambusher, I really love the way Irjavik can slot into a force and effectively replace a solo unit of Tundra Marauders. She is even higher a mobility when it comes to entering the battlefield, thanks to the fact that she is an ambusher rather than a scout. And even though she lacks the snow leopard tattoo, she is quite fast moving, and she has ways of triggering additional movement also. In addition to being able to backcap enemy objectives, she can also provide you with some ancillary ranged attack damage while doing so, and she is also surprisingly difficult to take out thanks to her plentiful defense dice and the Touched by the Winter ability. So all in all, the solo Irjavik has really found a solid place in my lists of late. When it comes to Cole, I feel that including him is going to make the whole package quite expensive, but it's not something that I wouldn't say can't be made to work. In a recent game against the Scions, I had a hunch that my opponent would be deploying a puppeteer in order to try and resurrect the reanimated units or the undead units, risen units during the battle. So I included Irjavik and Cole in my force, and I was able to assassinate the puppeteer and their entire unit of husks that was deployed to protect him at basically the starting line of the deployment zone with my first activation, thanks to the double activation provided by the siblings bond. So in situations like these, Irjavik and Cole together can also really be worthwhile. My favorite named character, surprisingly enough, also comes from the Warcrow adventures, and that has been Ormuk. Again, when I first saw Ormuk's card, I wasn't terribly impressed. He seemed like a bruiser in a faction of bruisers, and I didn't think that he was going to be all that impactful going forward. But oh boy, was I wrong. Even though many of the Northern Tribes units are capable of producing damage via switch abilities and retaliatory dice rolls when they are defending, Ormuk really is a whole different kettle of fish, thanks to the fact that he can substitute his entire defense roll for his entire offense roll, switches and push abilities included. And this sneakily has turned out to be effectively a way of providing additional activations to my forces, because if I use Ormuk to hit something and then the enemy tries to hit back and I get to attack again by substituting my defense roll for my attack roll, I'm effectively more or less gaining an activation doing so, and I have really loved this mechanic. For the longest time I was also extremely jealous of my hegemony opponents for their ability to slap Drago into a unit of bucklermen, then count all their symbols on the defense as blocks and being able to re-roll the ones that they didn't get a double symbol on. And lo and behold, now Northern Tribes have access to a unit that does more or less the same but on the offensive. Since the way that Ormuk's switches and elite work means that basically all symbols that he is rolling are successes of some type. And with Hair's Narwhal Tattoo and Bloodlust, there are plenty of rerolls to go around also. So that is really awesome, and he's a really cool and nice character to play. Beyond all this, he's a small footprint unit that's surprisingly sturdy, and he provides your force with a command token, as does Irjavik, by the way, so what's not to love? And this leads us to the end of this video. I would like to close this one out by congratulating Corvuspelli on a job really amazingly done. When the news broke that Warcrow was going to be a thing, and we found out that the Northern Tribes were one of the first two factions to be released, I was immediately drawn to them, and I was interested to see how things would work out. But even though I was looking forward to this game, I never thought that I would fall so madly in love with the faction, and that the game itself, with the little beauty problems aside, is so amazing all in all. The Northern Tribes faction, as we see it right now, is truly an excellent demonstration of how a traditional trope can be reshaped into something really interesting and really fun. The Northern Tribes backstory provides us two different takes on fantasy cultures that are in some ways similar and in many ways quite different. And the play style of the faction on the battlefield is really amazing and fun to use. The Northern Tribes forces are aggressive and they are very active. They are the ones taking the fight to the enemy and making a lot of the decisions to initiate hostilities and so forth. But at the same time, their playstyle is surprisingly versatile. You can do many different things with them, and this whole pack of hunters thing that they have going on is really fun to use, and I have really enjoyed playing them. So I can't I can't say enough good things about the Northern Tribes as a faction and Warcrow as a game, and I sincerely hope that this game is going to grow going forward, and I hope you all fellow travelers are enjoying it also already if you have started the factions that are available, or you are willing to jump in later when your personal favorite faction gets released. Thank you for joining me on this vanity project of a video. Let's discuss something more analytical the next time around. Safe travels to you all.